agree on the essentials, rather than the fluff of French imperialism, we don't want it anymore. I think the remaining countries in ECOWAS have understood that we can no longer bring back the three countries, Mali, Burkina, and then Niger, to return to the fold of ECOWAS. So it's better to talk with them now as equals, and I think they also wanted to create their own bank, create their own currency. They now also have a strength. This strength is recognized. It's what we call the balance of power. They've created a balance of power with the remaining countries in ECOWAS.
Greetings to all Africans across the continent and to our brothers and sisters in the African diaspora around the world. Today is Sunday, March 29, 2026, and you are watching United States of Africa TV. My name is Akosua Prempeh, and I am broadcasting from the United States of Africa. In today's report, we bring you an important development in West African diplomacy that could influence the future of cooperation and stability in the region. A new effort is underway to reopen dialogue between the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, and the countries of the Alliance of Sahel States, which include Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. These three countries, currently governed by military leaders, made the historic decision to withdraw from the regional bloc in January 2025, creating a major shift in the political landscape of West Africa. Now, a respected African diplomat and former Guinean Prime Minister, Lansana Kouyate, has been appointed as a mediator to help rebuild communication between both sides. His mission is not necessarily to bring the Sahel countries back into the organization immediately, but to create a framework for dialogue, cooperation, and mutual understanding on critical issues affecting the region. These discussions could focus on security cooperation, economic relationships, and the movement of people and goods across borders. As the region faces growing security challenges and economic pressures, many analysts believe dialogue is essential for stability and long-term regional cooperation. Before we begin the full report, we invite you to subscribe to United States of Africa TV, like this video, comment, and share it on WhatsApp, Telegram, Facebook, and all social media platforms so that Africans everywhere can stay informed and connected.
ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, has appointed Lansana Kouyate, former Guinean Prime Minister, as mediator in charge of renewing dialogue with Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, three Sahelian countries led by military juntas that left the regional bloc in January 2025. So, Samson, what is the interest for ECOWAS in renewing ties with the AS countries today?
Yes, first I'd like to clarify one point, which is that now we're no longer talking about a return. We're talking about just creating a framework for dialogue. We don't want these countries to come back into ECOWAS yet.
Not talking as return?
To within ECOWAS then. This is justified by the fact that even if we're angry, we share the same geographical space. And for that, we must be able to talk about infrastructure projects, and especially security projects together. Because the jihadists don't know where the AES ends and where ECOWAS begins. For them, it's a caliphate, it's emirates, it's territories, and it stops there. So the choice of this person who is quite experienced in the matter, he was president of the ECOWAS Commission for 5 years, from 2002 to 2007, notably during the height of the Togolese crisis, and he was known for his stances at that time. To play this role is, in my opinion, a rather good choice. But my concern lies in the amount of time allotted. He was appointed for 3
renewable months.
So in 3 months, faced with what is currently strong suspicion from the AES countries regarding the role played by certain ECOWAS countries, I'm talking here, for example, about Niger and Benin, where Niger continues to accuse Benin of harboring jihadist bases, and other countries like Mali too, and
BFIC.
And Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast. I wonder what significant progress he'll be able to achieve in such a short time frame. Now, he was appointed by the highest authorities. He had the blessing of the Conference of Heads of State and Government. I think, therefore, that all the tools will be put at his disposal so that he can manage to obtain solid agreements. regarding the free movement of goods and people, and regarding the jihadist struggle as well. Because believe it or not, when you see the map currently, the jihadist threat is getting closer and closer to the coast.
So in what way is the dialogue with ECOWAS crucial? The dialogue between ECOWAS and the AES?
You'll notice that even in previous wars throughout history, there has always been a so-called red telephone, which is a special line through which we communicate. Even if we're at war, even in times of conflict, we still look each other in the eye, as the saying goes. Even if we're fighting, we look each other in the eye. So we're forced to be in a same geographical sphere, which is ECOWAS. And then the AES broke away, but we live together. And the jihadist threat that is currently raging knows no borders. So it's better to agree on the essentials rather than the fluff of French imperialism. We don't want it anymore. I think the remaining countries in ECOWAS have understood that we can no longer bring back the three countries, Mali, Burkina, and then Niger, to return to the fold of ECOWAS. So it's better to talk with them now as equals, and I think they also wanted to create their own bank, create their own currency. They now also have a strength. This strength is recognized. It's what we call the balance of power. They've created a balance of power with the remaining countries in ECOWAS. So these countries must talk with them as alter egos and in good faith. And I think that, well, it's the deadline given to Lansana Kouyate that is very tight. In 3 months, I don't think much can be done. But the beginning of anything is worth considering. We'll see what it leads to. And I encourage it. We know him, right? He's someone who hasn't had many complaints against him during his time as Prime Minister. Even while at the ECOWAS Commission, he still has a certain moral integrity, which is why he was chosen. And I'd like to send that to those who think they can just sleep in power. One can also leave. And one could be sent to be a mediator somewhere.
So, your fellow debaters are talking about security, but as an economic analyst, will it perhaps also involve trade exchanges between the AES countries and those of ECOWAS?
It's a question that is unavoidable because fundamentally these are political issues, but also geo-economic issues. Togo is a country that knows this issue very, very well because we are the entry point for quite a few imported resources for the landlocked countries, as we say here.
With the port of Lome?
Oh yes, with the port of Lome as an important entry point. In fact, the Togolese played their cards relatively well in the squabbles between the Sahel and Benin, for example. They kind of outmaneuvered them regarding their port at the time. Well, from an economic intelligence standpoint, it was rather well played, and I think it continues to serve them well today. When you consider, for example, that I think the Togo must be around 60% of exports to them, just in terms of re-exports from the port that we send back to them. So it's an ally that it's an actor that we cannot ignore because it's truly the heart of a good part of our activities at the port level. Togo is a bit like a kind of tube there that sucks in imported products from the coast and sends them back.
Except that's Togo in particular. Today we're talking about the AES and ECOWAS as a whole.
Yes, of course. And it's much the same because the trade remains the same, whether it's from the port of San Pedro in Ivory Coast or even from Lagos. You can't really escape that. Not to mention, of course, the specific nature of the products the two zones trade. If you recall a bit from your geography lessons, there's what's called humid coastal West Africa. So that's us, the coastal countries. And then there's Sudano-Sahelian West Africa. So strangely enough, they're the ones who made the break within the Sahelian strip. So there are still specific products that we import from each other. Togo, for instance, at one point, the question arose as to whether we'd be affected when Burkina Faso, for example, suspended tomato exports quite recently. So there are still quite strong relationships between us. And in any case, politics isn't going to change that. The countries are where they are, and the economy is what it is. People continue to trade products without worrying about the fact that the two presidents or the three presidents are
at odds,
in a rift, or are having a dispute. Besides, we'll note that Benin, quite recently with Mr. Wadagni, who's starting to position himself for
the presidential election on April 12th.
He's starting to suggest, nonetheless, that we need to reconcile with certain neighbors in the sub-region, because at some point, when the arguing is over, the economy remains the economy, business remains business, and that must be considered. So when you have so many interests that go together, namely Security on one hand and the economy on the other, disputes can't last for too long if we're being reasonable.
So we're talking about a crucial dialogue, but will it be simple?
Not at all, because there's a huge amount at stake. Plus, in 3 months, I think this mandate will be renewed quite quickly. But
So the time frame is an issue?
from my point of view, it's quite short. It's quite short. Either, well, they want to be cautious to start with, test the waters and see how it goes. But it's obviously quite short. But still, in 3 months, it allows for a show of will to say, well, we want to take a step and then see how it goes. We're actually quite good at that, at these kinds of somewhat behind closed doors negotiations where we do things without appearing to do them, and then one day an agreement suddenly comes to light. So we'll see what the 3 months bring, and then we can always take stock.
Samson. So what are the assets, as you were saying before, the assets of Lansana Kouyate?
It's his moral
Integrity, for example, to be able
to succeed where his predecessors failed. Well, he hasn't really had a predecessor, actually. Most of the people who were there before wanted to bring the countries back into the ECOWAS fold. I think the roadmaps are quite different. So he's someone who's quite respected, precisely. He has moral integrity. He's quite affable, and I think he's someone who's already known in the corridors of the Sahelian presidential palaces and who will be able to speak on, I wouldn't say an equal footing, but who will be able to convey the message from the coastal countries to those countries so they can understand. For example, I'll add something. Even the people at the borders are the same. When you go to Malanville, those in Malanville and those in Gaia are the same people.
Malanville, Benin-Niger border.
Malanville is the border and Niger. But when you go to Gaia or Malanville, in Malanville they speak Dendi, but Dendi is a bit like the Yue of Lome and the Yue of Ghana. That's how it is with Dendi and Zarma. And Zarma is pretty much the same language as Songhai too. So these are people for whom, no matter how much we close the border, first of all, no African country has the capacity to systematically control its border. So people continue to move around and engage in trade. And when we don't oversee this, when we don't regulate it, jihadists also slip in and now start carrying out attacks here and there. So these countries which haven't completely left ECOWAS because it said they left ECOWAS, but they continue, for example, to participate in the ECOWAS body that fights money laundering, GIABA. They continue to participate in the ABID, sitting on the ABID as non-regional countries. So the break is political, but economically speaking, and in terms of security, I think realism and pragmatism mean that these countries are still there. And maybe, as I said earlier, this isn't an unprecedented case on the continent. I'm talking about the brutal break that occurred between Kenya and Uganda on one hand, and Tanzania. Today, the East African community has been reconstituted and even surpasses ECOWAS on many indicators. Even though for a time they were like cats and dogs, they weren't even speaking to each other. So I'm one of those who think that after this Russian, Chinese, American, French adventure and all that, geography and the reality on the ground will bring us back together. And we'll be stronger because often after these kinds of episodes, when we get back together, we now know the priorities, we know where we're going, and we move faster too.
Does Lansana Kouyate already have an agenda? Where to start?
Surely, as they say, when a blind man wants to throw a stone, it's because he's already stepped on that stone.
Or maybe he has it in his pocket.
He already has it in his pocket, so surely he already has his own plan and knows he could do something in 3 months. And his moral integrity could still work in his favor. And here I invite him, I'm taking advantage of your platform here to invite him to read a document released by a Togolese, a veteran of the political sphere named Souleymane Mamane Magbasim, who wrote an article on the AES, Ideological Anchoring and Future. If we read inside, we'll see that truly the AES must review its side of science and technology. If the AES bases itself firmly on science and technology,
Donation. Is Lansana Kouyate bringing science and technology to the AES today on behalf of ECOWAS?
No. I'm talking first about the AES, which must still restructure itself before facing ECOWAS. Because if the AES becomes weak, ECOWAS will walk all over it. So here we are. I'm talking about the balance of power that was established. So this balance of power must still be maintained. If the balance of power shifts, ECOWAS immediately regains the upper hand. So Lassina Zerbo or Kouyate can only go to them and let them know that the political break is final, but the economic break. And social too, we should say, because the people are the same. As we said, when you go to the border of Benin and Niger, people speak practically the same languages. In our case, in the far north, and then Burkina Faso.
The Mossi?
Yes, they are the same. People even go to school in Burkina and come back to Togo, just like Togo, and then Ghana, People go there and come back. So it's the political ideology that no longer aligns. But in terms of the economy, I think we have to be together.
So the sovereignist military in power, since 2020, they came to power between 2020 and 2023, they broke with the regional bloc they considered to be subservient to France. They formed their Alliance of Sahel States before creating a joint anti-jihadist force. Are there signals today indicating that they are being a bit more flexible towards ECOWAS, towards the CIEA and EPA?
Yes, I think the start was very tough. It was very tough. They've also started to realize that you can't push things too far. If you push too far, it's going to break. I've seen that these heads of state have toned it down a bit. It was no longer
ACE.
Those of the AES. It wasn't like before. Before, it was really confrontational. You listen to the speeches, you can feel the jabs right away. But now I think that they've realized they need to take a softer approach, so to speak. And I think that could work. Ideologically, they're right. They wanted to cut the umbilical cord with France, but with all the consequences, we see these consequences that are only being mentioned in hushed tones, because when France leaves, it doesn't really leave. It leaves, it keeps an eye out, it's still there. If you think you can kick France out, it's still there.
Samson is acting surprised.
No. France is there. I'm actually confirming it's very hard to get rid of an imperialist power that built its strength precisely on the dominance it has over you. And I think the best way to do it actually is not to shout about it. Thank you. It's to be more strategic, to be more organized. And for now, we don't see that from the AES countries. I'd also like to take this opportunity to say,
so today, a bit more flexibility from...
I think the economic realities. When you have a country, for example, that's under a fuel blockade by jihadist groups, I think it would benefit more from collaborating with the neighboring country where the fuel comes from.
I'm talking about Mali.
And I'm also talking about Niger right now, which besides the jihadists has to face several rebel groups on multiple fronts. I think it's quite complicated. And speaking specifically, to digress regarding the movement of goods and people, I've always found it abnormal that Niger could impose a residence permit on ECOWAS nationals of WEMU, even though within WEMU, the free movement of goods and people is established. I really wonder what would happen if Togo, as a reciprocal measure, wanted to apply the same residency policy to the hundreds of thousands of Nigerians who are in Lome. I think discussions should really go in that direction, and this point should be reviewed quickly.
Now, what's quite tragic in this whole ideological political quarrel we've had for, 6 years now regarding this matter, is that no country in the sub-region could truly resolve the security and jihadist issue alone. In order to effectively address and really tackle these complex and challenging issues, we would absolutely need to have strong, consistent, and ongoing transnational as well as regional coordination, especially when it comes to sharing intelligence, building up a deeper knowledge and understanding of migratory flows, identifying and monitoring pockets of resistance, and the terrorism present in the various countries, particularly in the tri-border area. It's already extremely difficult for a coalition. It's almost impossible for a single country, and we've seen it. Burkina Faso, for example, even Niger, they've lost a good part of their territory since the coups. So it's not all that rosy. And even
they're winning them back,
Today, yes, it's well, the Russian partner who has played very well, by the way, in terms of information warfare for a few years, has been caught up by the material reality on the ground. It hasn't been the panacea that was promised. Today, we need to form a strong and unified coalition, or at least meaningful cooperation at the sub-regional level.
On a security level, for example.
Security specifically and intelligence. Neither the coastal countries nor the Sahelian countries will be able to handle this alone. And the coastal countries must not make the mistake of thinking it's solely a Sahelian problem. Otherwise, we're going to have some very, very bad surprises, like we had last year and the year before. At some point, we must...
In what sense?
In the sense that we'll have jihadist incursions on our territories. We have to realize that, Sinkase isn't a 2-day drive from Lome. It's very, very close. And in reality, if people had modern tools, the strikes would happen very, very quickly. That's the reality. The danger is existential for all of us. And we must tackle the problem collectively, even if we don't like the other person's face. That's not the issue. The point here is to, behave like adults, and to realize that the issues go beyond our little egos of heads of state or ministers or friends of France or the United States. We don't care about that. What matters to us are our own interests. And the security and, how shall I say, existential imperatives we face go far beyond our little ideological quarrels.
So, Samson, do you see the Russian partner of the AES countries being at the same negotiating table with simply
I think
those in ECOWAS that are seen as somewhat beholden to France?
I think Russia has military cooperation agreements with almost all ECOWAS countries. The content of the agreements varies, and the nature of the services is different. But what Russia sells a lot of to African countries is weapons, actually, and they sell them to almost everyone. And they also train. They deploy military instructors to almost every country in Africa. Some countries have chosen to work only with Russia and also a bit with China. It's not often mentioned, but China is also very active on that front. And there are countries...
Turkey is included as well.
Turkey as well. And even Iran to some extent until recently. And there are also countries that say, we want the Russians, but just a little bit. So I don't see a scenario. The scenario of Russia at the table isn't really improbable, but we need to be able to define our priorities to know how we'll proceed. Because jihadism is fought with weapons, but also not just with weapons. Because if it were just a military issue, it would have been settled long ago. Nigeria has spent a lot of money, but currently the situation is so serious that there's even a new jihadist group called Mahmouda leaving Nigeria to now infiltrate Benin via the Segbana route, and which has already carried out many attacks against the military, police, customs officers, and even civilians actually. So Romuald Wadagni is really inheriting a quite complicated country. I wouldn't want to be in his shoes.
In his...
Yes, and I absolutely think that every country is sovereign and can diversify its partnerships as it chooses. So with Russia, we can still clearly make known the...
Russia, a partner of the AES countries.
Yes, a partner of the AES countries.
A privileged one.
Okay, privileged in quotes. You never know. But the AES countries can also decide to talk with the ECOWAS countries to see what they have to bring to the table. Now it's up to them to see if they'll buy it or not. So I think that...
Is there no problem regarding intelligence sharing?
Sharing, yes, because if we don't share intelligence, the whole community will be affected. If we take Burkina Faso now, it's Togo. And when we take Togo, it's Ghana and Benin. And it's Nigeria. First, Nigeria, we know it's a very large state, a very vast country, where there are places the state doesn't even set foot. So you can imagine, if there are more jihadist incursions now, it will be serious. Burkina Faso before only had 60 or maybe 40% of its territory, and it's only now that it's regaining towards 70 or 80. So I think intelligence sharing is very essential. We need to know that jihadists are starting to come from there, and that these places must be informed, start getting ready. But it's an asymmetric war, let's not forget. We don't know where they might come from. They come among us, we'll talk about it in the fourth topic. They settle in, they take our sisters, they take wives, they study our habits, and maybe after 2 or 3 years, they strike. So it's not a place where you can target and go bomb, just like the United States and Israel sometimes do with Iran. You really can't ever be completely sure where they are or what exactly they might be planning, unless there's intelligence that a column is moving toward a location. So I think it's a very crucial issue that these two entities, the AES and ECOWAS, must sit down to discuss.
Lansana Kouyate, whether he succeeds or fails, what message would that send to the community? The regional community of AES countries and the international community? 30 seconds.
I believe that the medium is the message, and the message here is that we already recognize there's no turning back for now. That's a given. The rest, I believe that in about 3 months, we can probably either extend his mandate or elect another. I don't think he'll fail, but I still think, will he be able to succeed? Don't know either. But it will still be a first step, and we'll see what follows.
From the AES?
Yes, my sincere wish is for him to succeed. So that I think, even if it's out of 10, they've gained 2 or 3 points. So my wish for Lansana Kouyate is that he succeeds.
We're taking a break, and we'll see you after the news on your channel.
To all our viewers across Africa and the diaspora, your voice matters. This channel is a platform for Africans everywhere to discuss the future of our continent and share ideas about the challenges and opportunities facing Africa today. As you watch this report, we would like to hear your thoughts. Question 1. Do you believe dialogue between the Alliance of Sahel States and ECOWAS can help strengthen peace and cooperation in West Africa? Question 2. In your opinion, what steps should African nations take to resolve political disagreements while still protecting regional unity and security? Please leave your thoughts in the comment section. Your opinion is important, and your voice contributes to the conversation about Africa's future. And once again, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share this video on WhatsApp, Telegram, Facebook, and all social media platforms so more Africans around the world can join this movement. My name is Akosia Prempeh, and I am broadcasting from the United States of Africa.